Ilia Topuria had the chance to become the greatest fighter ever, and he can accomplish it before the age of 30. Let's just take a look at his career in the UFC so far. His first fight was a decision win against Yusuf Zalal, and he took this fight on short notice. His second fight was a KO win against Damon Jackson. The third fight was against Ryan Hall, which ended up being one of the most satisfying KOs in UFC history. He then went up a weight class and took on Jai Herbert, and Topuria got dropped bad by a head kick but ended up recovering. He won the fight with probably his most brutal knockout yet. He then returned to featherweight and took on Bryce Mitchell, who he ended up submitting in the second round. Then came the Josh Emmett fight. Josh Emmett ended up going all 5 rounds with Topuria, but let's just make one thing clear, because I have seen people now ask the question after seeing Topuria finish some of the more well-known fighters, that how good is Josh Emmett really? And instead of good, let's just focus on how tough is Josh Emmett really? Because this fight wasn't close. It was destruction. The judges scored the fight 49-46, 50-44, and 50-42. So this was just domination over the course of 5 rounds. His crowning moment came against featherweight GOAT Alex Volkanovski. Volkanovski was playing into the old man gimmick going into this fight, and although many people may deny it now, they were certain that Ilia was going to get humbled. He was talking a big game before the fight, and I'm sure many fans were ready to put him on one of those trash talking gone wrong videos. However, Topuria knocked out Volk in the second round and became the featherweight champion. Then came his first title defense against Max Holloway, who once again, the fans can deny about what they thought was going to happen, but many people genuinely thought that Topuria was scared. Especially because he said that Holloway didn't deserve a shot at the title after he had won it, and mainly his reaction after Holloway knocked out Gaethje at UFC 300. But once they fought, Topuria knocked out Holloway, a man who has never been knocked out in his career. He still had contenders in the featherweight division to fight, but he had a vision in mind. He wanted to move up to lightweight and fight Islam Makhachev for the title, so he vacated his 145 title and moved up in weight. However, after Jack Della Maddalena defeated Bilal Muhammad, Makhachev also moved up to welterweight to pursue his dream of becoming double champion. So the fight was made between Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira for the vacant lightweight title. After many questions were asked about whether Ilia's power would translate into lightweight, whether Ilia would just look small in the octagon, and whether the lightweights would just be too physical for him, well, all those questions were answered. He outgrappled Oliveira, and once the fight was on the feet, he knocked him out. It was one punch that put Charles out cold. His power definitely translates. Well, what's next for Ilia Topuria to continue this GOAT speedrun? I think the fastest way possible to GOAT status is to fight Arman Tsarukyan next. He is the clear number 1 contender. And I understand that Dana and the UFC are upset about him pulling out of his title fight on 24 hours notice. But I'm just talking about what's best for Topuria's legacy, not what I think the UFC will do. Arman Tsarukyan is Ilia's toughest opponent at 155. That is a title defense that Ilia will get the most credit for. Paddy Pimblett might be the biggest fight for him in terms of numbers and hype, but he won't get the credit for winning that fight as of right now. I believe that Paddy is still 1 win away. Because no matter how good Paddy is and how dangerous he may be, if that's Ilia's next opponent and Ilia defeats him relatively easily, the narrative around that fight will be that Paddy was never good anyways, and his best win is over Michael Chandler, who just isn't very good. Well, you can't create that narrative with Arman Tsarukyan. However Ilia defeats Arman, whether it's an easy fight or the toughest fight of his career, which I believe it will be, nobody can turn around and say, well, Arman was never good anyways. That one title defense at lightweight is equal to Ilia beating Paddy and then somebody like Gaethje in my opinion. I value a win over Arman much higher. Now I would like to see him stay at lightweight for a couple more fights, but keep in mind this is a GOAT speedrun, and the next move would be to move up in weight once again. And if Islam Makhachev is holding the welterweight belt after defeating JDM, Topuria should follow him to welterweight. Obviously, I don't know how I feel about the fight between Islam and JDM yet, But it's not a foregone conclusion that Islam will beat him. It's going to be a tough fight, but we will assume in this case that Islam does become the new 170-pound champion. If Topuria goes up to fight Makhachev and defeats him, then he will become the first ever 3-weight division champion in UFC history. With his record, the quality of opponents he's beaten, and becoming a 3-division champion, then he will have completed the GOAT speedrun. And it is possible for him to accomplish all of this before he even turns 30. Topuria doesn't strike me as a guy who will be fighting in his late 30s, but accomplishing something as impressive as this might result in him retiring even sooner than he had originally expected. Now, of course, many things have to go right for him to complete this. The UFC must put the issues with Arman behind them and give him the title shot. Islam must defeat JDM, which is going to be no easy task. And then the UFC must allow Topuria to move up to 170 and challenge for the belt. I think it's very possible that they say, if he decides to vacate the lightweight belt and move up, they will not be giving him an immediate title shot. They will force him to fight another contender, in which situation I don't see Topuria moving up. They may want Topuria and Makhachev in separate divisions, and the featherweight title was already vacated and not won by somebody beating the champion. That just happened with the lightweight belt now after Islam vacated, and now if Ilia won the welterweight belt and then just vacated it, the UFC probably wouldn't be very happy with that. But as for wanting Topuria and Makhachev in separate weight divisions to continue to have them as your two faces of the UFC without having one outshine the other, does it really matter in this situation? How many fights does Makhachev even have left? I don't want this fight to be a what if. We may look back and say that we had probably the two best fighters in the world and they didn't fight each other. You already lost the Jones versus Aspinall super fight this year. Don't lose this one. I think this is a situation where a short UFC career will not be an argument used against Topuria for being the GOAT. If he follows this exact path, then I'm not worried about title defenses. The eye test so far tells me he's great, and becoming a 3-weight division champion would make him the GOAT of the sport.